My name is Eli Wright. I joined the Army in 2001. I served in the 1st Infantry Division, deployed to Iraq September 2003 until September 2004. Came home, worked at Walter Reed, and was then stationed at Fort Drum, New York, where I'm still currently serving on active duty. I'm currently awaiting a medical discharge from the Army for injuries sustained in Iraq and after I came home. And I guess, I don't know, it's most important for me to say that being an active duty soldier, you know, this is my own experience, these are my beliefs and my opinions, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the military or the chain of command. I'm not representing anybody's opinions or beliefs but my own. When I was serving in Iraq, I didn't have any glorious war story, no Purple Heart story for my injuries, and I think that's the reason why it's been made so difficult for me to get the care that I've tried to get for treating those problems. And it's an issue that is actually quite common. My particular issue was a vehicle accident. It wasn't anything hostile. It was just a driver not paying attention. I was sitting in the vehicle and not wearing a seatbelt. We didn't even have functional seatbelts. Unfortunately, we didn't have a functional lock on the door either. So when we were hit, I was ejected from the vehicle, and I sustained a back injury, neck injury. I hit my head pretty hard. Fortunately, I was wearing a helmet, but after that, I was given a brief screening. My adrenaline level was pumping, you know, it was cranked up pretty high, so I wasn't in a whole lot of pain at the time, and I was able to just, you know, continue mission. Charlie Mike, as they say. And so I kept at it and started having more problems after that, chronic back pain, neck pain. And then shortly after coming home from Iraq, I sustained another injury, which was just a football injury during unit physical training. Nothing spectacular there. And so I was given a quick screening for that. I had dislocated my shoulder and had torn cartilage in it, and was only given a quick x-ray and some Motrin. All of those of you in the military know how much they like to give out Motrin. So after that time, I was then dealing with these relatively minor physical injuries, and I started working at Walter Reed, and that's when the psychological injuries started setting in. It was about almost a year after I'd been back from Iraq. And so during the time at Walter Reed, I was still trying to seek treatment. I was a combat vet, but Walter Reed predominantly treats patients who are wounded in combat due to hostile action. And so my situation was kind of on the back burner. So I was unable to get any treatment for my shoulder injury there. I had recurrent dislocations throughout that time from, you know, various training activities, sports. I was able to see a chiropractor every so often, maybe once a month, which wasn't really helping my neck and back problems. Started having memory loss, headaches, dizziness sometimes. And that was when I started learning about traumatic brain injury, because at the time I was working in the neuroscience ward at Walter Reed, and we treated a lot of patients with traumatic brain injury. So I started learning about those. And that's when I started recognizing that I was having a lot of the symptoms of mild TBI, and I wasn't able to get anybody to pay attention to it, really. I couldn't get a screening for it. There really was no screening process for it at the time. In large part, there still isn't. But So I guess, fast forward now to over the last year or so, since I've been stationed at Fort Drum, once I got up there, I was given orders to deploy. And at that time, I had become pretty fed up with, not being able to get any treatment for my injuries. And I wasn't capable of doing my job. And that was one of my biggest concerns, was the fact that if I couldn't do my job, then other people might die. So I addressed those concerns with the medical screening team for processing. And they were finally able to address the shoulder injury and said, no, you're not fit for deployment. I gave them my MRI results, and they said, yeah, you need surgery. This was over 2 years after the injury. They said, you need surgery. You should have had surgery a long time ago. And so they ended up doing the operation, and then I went through about 6 months of physical therapy for that. And at that point, they told me I basically had plateaued. I had gotten all of the good out of the physical therapy that I was going to get, which, by that time, my shoulder was still, and still is, actually worse off than it was prior to the surgery. And they had told me that possibly because they had waited so long and my shoulder was so damaged that they basically had to overcorrect the surgery and pretty much disabled my shoulder for the rest of my life. And so it came time for medical discharge. And now that process has been going on for over 6 months, waiting for appointments for both psychiatric issues and for physical issues. Basically, nothing was happening for almost 6 months. They were sort of dragging their feet. I didn't see much progress happening. I was asking questions, not getting many answers. So I think the most important aspect of that was when I went and started speaking to the media and actually speaking out about those problems, because through all that process, I started learning about how many problems Fort Drum and, well, the military in general, but Fort Drum specifically, I was noticing many of the problems there. And, this was just after Walter Reed, after the scandal there last year, and that had all broke just after I had left Walter Reed. So, I knew that my problems weren't the only ones. My problems are minor compared to the other stories that I've heard and other soldiers that I've provided peer counseling for and talked to them about their problems. And, this is really like a systematic issue. And it's not any one particular doctor's fault. It's not any particular commander's fault. This is an entire problem that's facing our military as a whole. And basically, the only recourse that I was able to find was speaking to the media. And within about 2 days after the last time I spoke with the media, I was in to see a traumatic brain injury specialist. I was in to see a physical therapist to rescreen my shoulder, diagnose more problems. And it was basically 6 months of almost no progress. And then within 2 days of speaking to the media, I was able to actually get proper care. And so I guess my main message is that, we all know how many problems there are with VA healthcare, but military healthcare doesn't really seem to get much attention because soldiers are afraid to speak out on those issues. And when they're not getting the care that they were promised, the care that they have earned through their service, then I think it's most important for them to start speaking out about that. It has worked for me, and I encourage any other soldiers who are facing these issues, don't keep it quiet. And, unfortunately, in many cases, you can't rely on your chain of command to fix these problems. So I think it's just an issue that has been silent for too long. And it's time soldiers start actually being proactive and demanding the proper health care. We've enlisted, we stepped up to serve our country, and we haven't asked for a whole lot in return, but proper health care should be, at a bare minimum, what we're entitled to. And the fact that we're not getting that